I'd like to ask you to imagine for a second, what's the first thing that you do when you're sick? If you're like most people, well, you Google it, and I guess on the surface that's not so bad. But I think at some point we have to ask ourselves, how much trust should we put in the internet? I'd like to stand here to make the claim that the internet is a bad resource concerning our health. I'd like to go about proving this by showing you that the information is unreliable, but I'd also like to show you why it's unreliable. My second point is that even when you do get the proper information, a lot of the times that's simply not enough to tell you what is indeed wrong with you and how to proceed. Thirdly, I'd like to show you that the internet is a purveyor of a lot of bad drugs, and I don't mean illegals like marijuana, but bad pharmaceuticals that are supposedly designed to help treat you. And finally, I'd like to show you how, in a lot of cases, the internet can negatively empower patients to worsen their own condition. But let's start at the beginning with the information that the internet gives. The Department of Pediatrics at Nottingham University did a study where they revealed that only about 39% of the information, or medical information that you find on the internet is accurate. But of that 39%, a lot of it is actually only out there for pharmaceutical companies to push their own products. And Microsoft did a second study where they furthered this research, and they actually analyzed the searches, or the results that they got. They found that when you do a search for headache, about a quarter of the results is going to give you, well, it's going to tell you that you have a brain tumor. And then basically what that means is we have to ask ourselves, what is the internet doing when we do a search? It's going to give you the most popular results first. So what's going to get more results? You know, a hunger headache or the tumor that gets all the news reports, because that's the tragic story. And that brings me to my second point. Even when you do get proper information, a lot of the times that's just not enough to really tell you what's wrong with you. Dr. Newmark, the lead care physician at the Harvard Medical School, tells us that doctors use not only the symptoms they see in you, but also their clinical sense when making a diagnosis. And he calls this a blending of an art and a science. And this is basically because diseases share a lot of symptoms. It is indeed the case that headaches are a symptom of brain tumors, but so is missing your morning coffee or being dehydrated. This means that the internet is inherently inclined to give you an overestimation for the likelihood that you have a serious illness. But it's not only the case that we get our information off the internet, we buy all our products. This brings me to my third point, the idea of bad drugs. Now, online pharmacies, like in concept, aren't bad. My family uses them, but that's in the case where they've been certified and you need to get a prescription to go through them. There's another phenomenon called rogue websites, and they've actually become such a problem because they sell pharmaceuticals, but they don't require any doctor prescription or even any medical history for you to get them. And it became such a problem, actually, that the FDA had to issue a warning, telling people how to recognize them and to not buy the drugs. They did a study where they bought a sample of Tamiflu from them and analyzed the pills. They found it only contained talc and acetaminophen, but none of the active ingredients in Tamiflu. They repeated this with other drugs like Ambien, Xanax, and Lexapro and found similar results. But one of the real sinister things about these rogue websites is how they get the drugs to you. Another study by Natasha Courtney, who's a writer for the Daily Mail, she tried to sign up for one of these rogue websites with a profile as a 70-year-old obese woman with heart disease and high blood pressure, and tried to buy Viagra, and reported that she had no trouble getting the drugs. I'm not a doctor, and even I know just from watching the commercials that this is a serious risk to your health. This shows us that they give no consideration to your medical history, or any, not even mentioning the fact that she's a woman. Finally, these rogue websites put on a professional facade to make you think that you're buying from these credible site, just without a doctor's prescription. And this brings me to my final point, that the internet actually has an ability to worsen our case. It's in the case of hypochondriacs. Hypochondriac is somebody who shows unnatural levels of anxiety concerning medical diseases. Now, in the past, what you did, you go to the library and then you get a book, and all the information there is confirmed and certified by doctors. So, in principle, that's not too big of a deal. But now, as a person, you have access to a wealth of information put up by anybody, anywhere, for any reason that hasn't been certified. Dr. Brian Fallon, a psychiatrist at Columbia University, tells us that for hypochondriacs, the internet has absolutely changed things for the worse. This is compounded by the fact that the internet is going to give us our diseases in order of severity. Now, if you put yourself in the position of somebody who has an anxiety disorder, this only makes your issue many times worse than it was when you didn't have access to this wealth of incorrect information. And I think perhaps now it would be beneficial to take a step back and look at everything the internet has to offer, like from the big picture. It gives us bad information. It gives us information we can't really use. It supplies us with bad drugs. And in a lot of cases, it can actually worsen our condition. So I hope you can join me in saying that the internet is a bad resource concerning our health.
Yeah, the world's full of people who are self-diagnosing themselves with the worst thing possible. And in the old days, before the internet, I always told people, whatever you do, don't get a medical encyclopedia or dictionary, because if you have that at home, you start looking up symptoms, you're going to start thinking all these things about yourself. So now, of course, it's just as easy as touching the screen and getting the same results. I thought you did a good job identifying your proposition and the idea of people visualizing the information by Googling it. I thought that worked pretty well. I do think you need to have a little bit sharper definition of what you mean by a bad influence or a bad way of doing these kinds of things, that it has negative consequences, that it could lead to undesirable results. There's got to be another way of expressing it that I think is a little bit more objective and sounds less like you're making a value judgment that's going on here. The secondary issues are pretty well laid out. Some of the same problems, though, just the phraseology, I think, on it could be better. It's relatively easy to follow, and I like the examples that you use to explain concepts as we go along. I do think that we need a little bit more information that's quantifiable in nature. I thought that you did a good job, for instance, in quantifying problems with online pharmacies, and their lack of consistency in providing the real material that they're supposed to have, especially these rogue sites. There was some statistical information on that. I just have no idea about how many people rely, Gesundheit, on internet pharmacies for their prescriptions, and in particular how many end up in these kinds of places, these rogue sites, and why they would end up in those rogue sites. Is that because those are pay sites that are promoted in search engines? Is it because they appear to have the cheapest prices? Is it because they are convenient, or is it a name or something like that that draws people in? And like I said, how many people get this? I live a sheltered life because I'm older and I'm used to doing things old school way. It would never occur to me to go online to get a prescription for a drug to take without seeing a doctor, much less have somebody ship it to me online. I'm perfectly fine ordering a book online or getting something else on eBay, but I don't want to be going to eBay for my pharmaceuticals. That just seems weird to me. But maybe I live in a sheltered world like that. But I have no idea if half the population is conducting their medical pharmacology stuff online. That would be something that would be insightful and helpful in building your argument here. So I don't doubt that a lot of what you're saying is true and accurate. I'm just not sure how significant it is, which is, like I said, kind of a recurring problem. We just need a little bit more data on it. I thought there were good transition points as you're moving from one idea to the next. You did a very good job citing your sources, so that I think is pretty effective. And as far as the argument goes, I think you did a solid job making generalizations. The delivery is really nice. You luck out. You've got a good voice for speaking. I think you've got one of those things that sounds like it's forceful, and you feel confident in what you're talking about, and you use it pretty well in making the presentation. I like the summary also, because basically you're getting down to the nitty gritty here at the end. It's like, here is the 1, 2, 3 punch of the argument that I'm making, and that's the conclusion. And I think that's an effective way to finish the speech. All right, thank you.